Occupied France, 1944, a Gestapo interrogator stands over a captured British agent in the basement of 84 Avenue Foch, Paris. He has pliers, he has electrodes. He has a bathtub for simulated drowning. He has days, perhaps weeks, to extract every name, every safe house, every radio frequency, every drop point locked inside his prisoner's mind. Seasoned interrogators had broken countless operatives before, though some proved impossible to crack. The Special Operations executive understood human limitations all too well. They knew what their agents faced, and they knew that courage alone wouldn't be enough. What the interrogator standing in that basement couldn't possibly know was that his prisoner held a final trump card. Hidden in the fabric of the agent's shirt collar, completely invisible even during the most invasive body searches, lay a tiny rubber-coated capsule no bigger than a pea. Within that capsule sat a fragile glass ampule filled with concentrated potassium cyanide. A single deliberate bite would release a dose calculated to bring death within minutes. When that happened, every secret, every contact, every operational detail would die alongside the person who carried them. The Germans weren't naive about cyanide suicide. Their own leadership would eventually choose the same path. American intelligence services created similar devices. But it was British intelligence that first conceived the idea and systematically distributed these instruments of controlled death to field operatives. This is the account of the L-pill, the covert tool that prevented German interrogators from achieving complete victory and provided captured agents with something the Gestapo could never strip away: the authority to make one final irreversible decision. Understanding Britain's motivation for developing a suicide capsule requires grasping what awaited captured operatives. The Sicherheitsdienst and Gestapo maintained interrogation facilities throughout occupied territories. The most infamous sat at 84 Avenue Foch in Paris, a commandeered apartment building where Sturmbannführer Joseph Kiefer orchestrated an elaborate operation engineered to shatter even the most resilient prisoners. Kiefer wasn't driven by sadism. He embodied something far more threatening: cold professionalism. German interrogation transcended simple brutality. Kiefer favored psychological warfare over immediate violence, recognizing that intelligence gathered through establishing rapport typically proved more dependable than confessions extracted through beating broken bodies into submission. He ambushed prisoners with evidence of betrayals they didn't realize had transpired, displaying photographs of colleagues they assumed were safe, reciting their own encrypted messages intercepted months prior, producing seized documents bearing their personal handwriting. He distributed cigarettes, offered coffee, made promises of improved conditions. Sometimes he fabricated what he knew. Other times he revealed genuine intelligence. The uncertainty itself became weaponized. When psychological tactics proved insufficient, the Gestapo implemented physical methods without restraint. Systematic beatings. Waterboarding in the bathtub 3 stories beneath the refined offices. Electrical current applied to vulnerable areas. Sleep deprivation extending for weeks until prisoners experienced hallucinations. Suspension by the wrists until shoulder joints separated. The baignoire technique, where prisoners were submerged until they believed death was imminent, then revived to endure the terror repeatedly. The calculations were merciless and absolute. A captured operative who cracked under duress could devastate an entire resistance infrastructure within hours. One revealed name triggered 10 apprehensions. 10 apprehensions cascaded into 100. 100 apprehensions meant the complete obliteration of months or years of painstaking network construction. The Prosper network throughout France disintegrated in June 1943 through precisely this mechanism, with over 400 arrests spiraling from a handful of captured operatives who disclosed too much under extreme pressure. Each operative possessed intelligence worth dozens of lives, potentially hundreds, and the Germans commanded unlimited time to extract it. British intelligence confronted an unsolvable dilemma with no orthodox solution. They could condition agents to withstand interrogation for 48 hours, maybe 72, providing networks sufficient time to disperse and safe houses to be evacuated. But no human could resist indefinitely against dedicated professional interrogators operating without legal boundaries. Eventually everyone broke. The only variables were the magnitude of damage they'd inflict before breaking and whether that damage would obliterate everything So had constructed. The answer emerged from an improbable source. A country manor in Hertfordshire called the Frythe, designated Station 9 by the Special Operations Executive, seized by British military intelligence in August 1939 as conflict became inevitable. The Frythe transferred to Soho when the organization officially established itself on July 19, 1940. Winston Churchill's directive to Soho was straightforward: set Europe ablaze. The Frythe transformed into Britain's clandestine laboratory for achieving that objective through ungentlemanly warfare. Lieutenant Colonel John Dolphin administered the installation with military exactitude. Professor Dudley Maurice Newitt directed scientific investigation, applying academic precision to challenges universities would never publicly acknowledge. Every apparatus developed there received the Well designation after the adjacent town of Welwyn Garden City. The identical workshops that manufactured explosive coal engineered to detonate in locomotive fireboxes, incendiary briefcases that erupted into flames when opened improperly, and the legendary Welrod silent pistol now redirected their expertise toward the most personal weapon conceivable, a pill enabling agents to select death over betrayal on their own terms, according to their own timing. The technical obstacle was formidable and unprecedented. The capsule required lethality that was swift and dependable, operating within minutes rather than hours. It demanded dimensions small enough for indefinite concealment on one's body without discovery. It necessitated sufficient safety that agents wouldn't perish accidentally from falls, beatings, or simply forgetting the capsule's presence. And critically, it needed to grant the agent, never their captors, absolute authority over when death occurred. Nobody else could execute that decision. Only the individual carrying the pill possessed that power. Station IX's scientists selected potassium cyanide in concentrated liquid form contained within a thin-walled glass ampule roughly the size of a garden pea. The glass was intentionally delicate, engineered to fracture readily under pressure from human teeth. This was then encased in brown rubber, occasionally gray rubber for operatives functioning in cities, where local resistance nicknamed them cough drops with dark humor. The rubber coating fulfilled a vital protective role that rendered the device practical for field deployment. The design philosophy dictated that if an operative accidentally ingested the capsule whole without biting, the intact rubber would permit it to traverse the digestive tract without releasing the toxin. Death demanded the conscious, deliberate, irreversible action of crushing the glass between one's teeth. The engineering aimed to guarantee there could be no accidents, only deliberate choices. The physiological process was elegant in its ruthlessness. Cyanide attaches to cytochrome oxidase in the mitochondria, blocking cells from utilizing oxygen. The body asphyxiates at the cellular level. According to SOE operative Sean Fielding, who operated in Crete from 1943 to 1945, the pill would cause death in a matter of minutes if crushed, but induce death very painfully 3 to 4 hours later if swallowed intact. Manufacturing took place at Station 12, Aston House near Stevenage, commanded by Colonel Leslie James Wood, widely considered an inspiration for Ian Fleming's Q character. Station the 12th's production capability was substantial. The facility manufactured over 12 million time delay detonators and 38,500 limpet mines throughout the conflict. While precise L-pill production statistics remain classified or destroyed, the device's straightforward construction indicates significant quantities were produced. Concealment approaches proved as inventive as the pill itself. Female operatives, like Christine Granville, carried capsules stitched into skirt hems. Male agents had pills sewn into shirt collar corners where they could bite through the fabric to access them. Others disguised capsules as ordinary coat buttons. Certain lipstick holders incorporated hidden compartments. Hollywood subsequently popularized the image of cyanide pills embedded in hollow teeth. This is complete fabrication. Vince Houghton, curator at the International Spy Museum, confirms there exists no evidence that anyone commissioned any variety of hollow tooth for any cyanide capsule. It would require a massive tooth. The pea-sized L-pill simply couldn't fit within a realistic false tooth. Hollow teeth were employed for concealing microdots and microfilm. Never poison. The L-pill represented something unprecedented in warfare history. Not merely weaponry, but a psychological agreement between the British government and its clandestine operatives. Capture need never equal betrayal. Regardless of how sophisticated German interrogation methodologies became, agents understood. They maintained final jurisdiction over their own silence, the most clearly verified. L-pill usage originates not from an SOE operative but from Jacques Bingen, a high-ranking officer of the BCRA, the Bureau Central de Renseignements et d'Action, the Free French intelligence service collaborating with British operations throughout occupied Europe. Bingen functioned as one of General de Gaulle's most senior representatives inside occupied France, personally coordinating resistance networks across multiple territories and possessing intelligence that could dismantle the entire architecture of French resistance operations. On May 12, 1944, Belgian double agent Alfred Corbin betrayed Bingen's whereabouts to the Gestapo. German officers apprehended him at Clermont-Ferrand train station in broad daylight. Bingen possessed the identities of major resistance commanders across France. He held operational intelligence that could unravel months of Allied preparation. Just weeks before the Normandy invasion scheduled for June, he knew radio frequencies, drop zones, weapons stockpiles, escape routes, and the identities of hundreds of individuals who entrusted him with their survival. He also comprehended with the professional certainty of an experienced intelligence officer precisely what awaited him in the interrogation cellars of Avenue Foch. Rather than risk breaking under torture and condemning everyone he knew to apprehension and execution, Bingen consumed his cyanide capsule. According to French resistance archives, his body was never retrieved by his family. The Germans disposed of it without ceremony. He received the Ordre de la Libération posthumously, one of only 1,038 people ever awarded that distinction. The secrets he carried, every name and network and operational detail, perished with him in those final minutes at the train station. Henry Larrett presents another documented instance. Dropped into France in May 1942 for Operation Basist, Larrett was stopped on a train where Germans discovered his radio equipment. He shot 2 German officers while attempting escape, then consumed his cyanide pill rather than face capture. Lieutenant Colonel Pierre Molson similarly utilized his capsule after being betrayed in late 1943, yet the most psychologically revealing case involves an operative who didn't use his L-pill. Pierre Brossolette, technically BCRA rather than so, but working intimately with British intelligence, was captured on February 3, 1944. The Gestapo detained him at 84 Avenue Foch for weeks, subjecting him to severe beatings and waterboarding. On March 22, 1944, in an incident well documented by historians including Encyclopedia Britannica, Brossolette threw himself from a 5th-floor window to his death. He selected physical suicide over chemical. This suggests either that his L-pill was confiscated during capture or that profound psychological barriers prevented him from utilizing it, even when he could accept death through alternative means. The distinction hints at complexities in human response to controlled suicide that, so training never fully addressed. Among British operatives, Violette Chabot was issued an L-pill but captured before she could employ it. After exhausting her ammunition during the firefight at Salon-la-Tour on June 10, 1944, she was seized by SS troops before she could reach the pill sewn into her garments. She was later executed at Ravensbrück concentration camp around February 1945, receiving a posthumous George Cross. Noor Inayat Khan's case presents conflicting narratives. Standard SOE issuance protocols indicate she was provided with an L-pill alongside her other equipment. However, as a Sufi pacifist, she may have refused it on religious grounds. One account claimed she rejected both a weapon and the suicide pill because both conflicted with her moral code. What is certain is that she was captured in October 1943, held in chains at Avenue Foch after multiple escape attempts, and executed. At Dachau on September 13, 1944, a striking gap exists in the historical record. No captured German documents specifically discussing British suicide pills have been identified in accessible archives. This absence doesn't mean Germans were unaware. They clearly were, given their extensive penetration of SO networks and interrogation of captured operatives. Top Nazi leaders themselves would employ cyanide capsules at the war's conclusion. But formal SD or Gestapo protocols specifically countering SOL pills remain undocumented. Whether this reflects genuine policy absence or simply archival gaps remains an open question. What can be inferred from circumstantial evidence is suggestive. The fact that Brossolette resorted to jumping from a window rather than using his capsule strongly suggests it had been discovered and confiscated during his initial search. The Germans themselves certainly understood cyanide capsules. Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, Eva Braun, and Joseph Goebbels all died using them. When Himmler crushed his concealed capsule during a British medical examination on May 23, 1945, death required 10 to 15 minutes despite desperate countermeasures including immersing his head in water. Kiefer's interrogation methodology at Avenue Foch may itself reflect awareness of suicide risks. His preferred tactic was to lull prisoners into a feeling of safety, treating them as gentlemen and even friends, confronting them with pre-captured intelligence rather than immediate physical torture. This slower psychological approach could indicate recognition that rushed brutality risked triggering suicide attempts. The Americans developed comparable suicide pills through the Office of Strategic Services during the war. Post-war CIA scientists at Fort Detrick advanced the technology considerably. The 1975 Church Committee investigation revealed that CIA stored 18 cyanide L-pills plus 11.4 grams of shellfish toxin called saxitoxin, a poison that kills in seconds at microscopic doses. But American adoption of British methodology represented the sincerest form of flattery. The L-pill originated at the Frave. The concealment techniques came from Station 12, the psychological framework that agents deserved control over their own silence was a British innovation exported to every Allied intelligence service. Contemporary academic analysis confirms that utilization rates for L-pills remain surprisingly low. Psychological barriers often prevailed, with agents trained in evasion and resistance preferring to withstand torture in hopes of rescue or to protect networks through silence. A human survival instinct frequently overrode training, yet the L-pill's power may have exceeded its practical utility in ways that pure casualty statistics cannot capture. So cryptographer Leo Marx, whose memoir Between Silk and Cyanide remains the most intimate account of the organization's inner workings, described the pill as an optional extra. Agents could decline it without consequence or judgment. The title of his book itself captures the agent's dilemma, the choice between secure codes printed on silk and the cyanide that offered a final escape. Those who accepted the pill carried a psychological talisman that no training exercise could replicate. The knowledge that capture need never become complete surrender, that torture need never become betrayal. This represented a fundamental transfer of power from captors to captive. A reversal of the interrogation dynamic that German intelligence never anticipated and never solved. The Gestapo could control the physical environment completely. They could apply pain without limit or legal constraint. They could manipulate psychology with captured intelligence and false promises. They could threaten family members. They could offer life in exchange for names. But they could never control the agent's final choice. That authority remained with the person in the chair, not the person holding the electrodes or the pliers or the switch on the electrical apparatus. Today, an original L-pill sits in the Imperial War Museum's collection in London, catalogued as Object number 3,082,360. The museum describes it as a suicide ampule containing liquid compound cyanide, a glass ampule concealed within a modified German 7.92 mm cartridge case marked Z193911. Visitors walk past it every day without understanding what this tiny object truly represents, without comprehending the weight of history contained in something smaller than a fingertip. Not merely a suicide device, though the description is technically accurate. Not merely a chemical weapon, though the science behind it was lethal, but a symbol of something far more profound, the final act of resistance, the last measure of control, and the ultimate sacrifice made by those who understood that some secrets are worth dying to protect.